Hello everyone, it's good to have you back. Welcome to the live stream today, and this is a special one. It's not single mode synthesis, this is about a new album that I just put out today on Seil Records. It's called Light Splitting. I have to see if I can fit it on screen. Yeah, so like this. And yeah, this is a rather special album. And today I just want to play it to you, and then we can talk about it. After that, I'll have some questions from the Patreons that I'll answer, and I'll be also answering your questions, and maybe we'll give it a second spin, or we'll listen to one of the other albums in this series of 3 records that started with Gestures, went on to Assertion, which came out on Chase Bliss in the vinyl form, and now Light Splitting. So thank you all for being here, if you're watching live right now or if you are in the chat. I'll try to watch this chat. Usually there's Ben who does this when we do single mode synthesis, so this will be like double tracking everything. I'll try to look at the chat. But first, let's put on the album, and then we listen and talk during that. I'll be talking over the music, no worries. This won't just be a vinyl record spinning. So, camera angle 2. This is the opening track. Let me know if the levels of my voice to the music are okay, or if I should lower or raise something. Probably the music just a touch down. Now, the one thing that's sad about this record is that right now it's not possible for Seil to ship to the States. Canada is fine, but to the States it's just prohibitively expensive. And Seil will probably find a way around that, hopefully at some point. Or the situation will just ease and you can get normal posting prices. So fingers crossed for that. So level good now, I think. Sounds good here. So Arctic 45, it might be too soothing. I'm trying to talk low and So this track, the opening track, A Clear Path, that's actually one of the first tracks that I recorded for this album. And that was immediately clear when I played that to Boris, who is also Jogging House and runs Seil Records, that this has to be like a track on the album. And I finished a complete album actually, like back in 2018. But then I made Gestures. And Gestures, this album, which I just learned sold out today on vinyl. So I think the only place where you can still get it might be at Patch Point in Berlin. This one. So I made this in like just a few days, 4 days, 3 days. And it was just more powerful because it came from such a rare moment in time for me. I was in the Black Forest, which is on the cover, you can see these trees. And I was basically, my father was dead for like maybe 4 months, and it was the first holiday there with the kids, but without my father. And I just turned this into an album that I didn't even play by touching the instruments. I played it just through gestures, using radio antennas on Seil Bombard instruments. And that was a crazy experience because you have to be really concentrated, and even though the music on that album, Gestures, is very airy and light, I was sweating hard after each track. But I made that album and it became one cohesive piece, so Boris and me decided, nah, let's do this album, and put the other tracks away for maybe a later point. And a clear path from that basically discarded album became the opening of the new album, Light Splitting. And yeah, this is right now, I just saw it's place 4 on Bandcamp best-selling in all genres, which makes me incredibly happy. This is so amazing. Thank you all for buying this. If you don't know, it's pay what you want digital, and you get vinyl and tape. And tapes are, I think, half sold out already, which is, yeah, thank you. So, on to the second track. And this is the title-giving track, and for a good reason, because when this track came together, I knew, like, this has to be the core of the album. This is something that I made using a 4-track, and these faraway signs that you're hearing. This is a Brilliant Care bandpass filter. I think I have it up there. It's small but still heavy. Here. This small bandpass filter, which the great thing is, you can move through the frequencies with no steps, so you can really tune in to what you want to hear. So this is basically the sound source of almost everything on here, tracked to a 4-track. Put it back. Even these little things, way too heavy. Hello everybody joining now. Thank you all for being here. This is... When I started out making music, I tended to record, layer, and then delete. But the older I got, the more it has become a goal for me to not do that, and just never do more than absolutely necessary. And this is one of the rare tracks I feel for myself where I've achieved that, because there isn't much to it. And even the small little pings, there's like a ping when the bandpass filter passes a certain point, and that just sounds nice into like the Alesis Wedge, which is one of the nicest old school desktop effects you can get. And yeah, I'm really a big fan of that. One thing that I always notice is whenever I get a test pressing is how much more crackly it is. And according to my friend who works for Tangerine Dream, the news Tangerine Dream, it's because Gerd Fröse said, that's because they use cheap vinyl for the test pressings, like leftovers and stuff. I've got no idea if that's true, but if it comes from Fröse, I mean, there must be at least something there, maybe something he experienced. But yeah, the test pressing is always very crackly, and there's no crackling. And if you can see, this is not a fancy player. I bought this for 25 Deutsche Mark, I think, which is like 15 euros, or I don't know what 20 euros, let's say, like that, at a flea market. And it only has on and off in 2 speeds. The only thing I did, I put in a nicer like system in there, but I like the sound of this very, very simple machine. There was the pop again. And that's when the filter passes the bypass stage that in its own is a sound. It pings itself. Self-pinging filters are very nice. Larry Day, that sounds like a perfect place. The Brighton beach today while recording C. Yeah. Seeing the beach again would be nice. We had booked to go to Greece, but of course, flight cancelled. So, mountains are fine too. I actually really like the mountains. Hi Bruno. Ach, you're in Malmö. I didn't know that. I planned when I go to Sweden, I'll definitely go to Malmö. So, yeah, we will see each other there. Jake Streamer, yeah, investing in test equipment. It's I don't know if you can call it investing, but it's a lot of fun at least, especially if you try to use stuff that is not go for cheap stuff. I mean, there is like some tools that are great, like and absolutely great, but are very expensive now, like the Rot and Schwarz UBM. But there's so much stuff that you can find really cheaply. I'm very fond of Tektronix TM500 series because it's pretty small and compact. I mean, it's still super heavy, but it's compact at least. It's almost like a modular. It is modular. It's a modular format, but there's some very cool stuff in there that has some of the best sounds of all the test equipment so far I've discovered. And I probably need to do a video on the analog 500 format, TM500 format at some point, because there's just great tools in there. Track number 3 already. This is going feels like super fast. Speaking of test equipment, this is a track made entirely on test equipment after my tour to Winnipeg and Toronto. Right after I came back kind of jet-lagged, I tried to get that feeling into music, and I choose the test equipment for that and used the 4-track to loop the test equipment to get a bit more, how would you say, distant feeling, because the test equipment can be very direct, but when you run it through 4-track it just becomes distant, so you can choose which quality of the sound you want. So this is entirely test equipment, which is, I personally don't do so much of the softer side of test equipment, but on this album there are 3 tracks that explore that, and I find it very beautiful how rich they are, even though you could probably just do all that with some kind of polyphonic synthesizer, but I think the process makes it more exciting. The process of having to build it really note by note with big knobs turning, like, okay, this is the frequency, now it's starting to beat, okay. Anastasia, yeah, I don't see so much skyrocket actually. I mean, there's stuff now I still see a lot of cheap stuff, especially in the US. The US is full. You've got so many, and there's so many stores, so many secondhand stores, and also Toronto, for example, Canada has so much like stores that sell it, and yeah, I always suffer at the shipping stage, but in classifieds, there's so much you can find. For example, anyone looking for a Rot and Schwarz UBM, like the king of everything, bass drum, filtering, screeches, used by Stockhausen, there is one on Kleinanzeigen right now. I don't know if it works. It's the rack version with no back, so you can check that out. And I don't know what price that will go, because it just says make offer. So probably gonna be expensive, but that thing was already expensive because it was well known in Berlin and Dutch techno circles what this will do to a 303. Rustic Ink, how do you perform the test equipment songs live? I really can't, except for when I play with the landfill totems, which I'm hoping to set up a performance again at Patchpoint, where they are right now, and I'm working on them and playing with them. But then I will play them, and I've got like, I played with the TM500 format in Colorado, and I played in Berlin with the nuclear instrumentation format. So it's smaller versions. I can't bring the big stuff. Only when I do like installation pieces. There it makes sense. Bruno Wiebelt, nice heartbeat. Yeah, that's actually like that's a very nice filter by Cronin Height. Those are pretty beautiful because they sound so soft and dry. I really like these for these very human sounds. Arctic 45. I wish I could make music on tape, but I do not know how to. I mean, I made a few like how to do things. Like there's one where talking to what machines to buy, and you could just look into that. And then there's some more considerations about what kind of splicing stuff, and it's not that hard. It's really just get any tape machine, and then you figure out like what the connectors are. The subreddit, Heinbach subreddit is super nice, also the tape loops one, and there you can find all the information that you need on how to make music with these machines. Mark Owen, yes, I am going to do a premiere with analog computing, but what happened yesterday? I crossed streams, which is something you should never do, according to Ghostbusters at least, because I was setting up that stream in a different program, StreamYard, and then I was working to set up this stream because I wanted stereo quality and everything to make it sound and look as good as possible, which is not possible with StreamYard. But they share the same key. And so when I started the test stream here, it instead opened the public stream, and it took me 4 minutes to realize that people were just, what's he doing? I don't know, because I was just looking up and checking the settings. I'll set that up again once I'm done with this stream, and then StreamYard will get its own key. Yeah, that was very, very confusing. So, but still, after like, I don't know how many years of streaming, there's stuff that it's just confusing. Hi, Alfonso Rus Palacios Romero. Take out, are there any pieces of test equipment, analog equipment in general, that you have been searching for but are unable to find? Yeah, there's a spectrum filter by Brilliant Kier that I played at Waveform Research Center, Dennis Verschaw's studio, and at Willem II, and that's absolutely amazing, but never obtainable because it's a high quality 30 band like filter, and I wish that would be like one of the dream units because you can really shape the sound, so that would be great. But yeah, that's basically I think the only thing I really need, except for another HP 8006, the Booger, the best word generator, but that's always, I've seen that go for like people asking €2,000 for it, which is stupid. The Wumbi, nice music, thank you. Freeney talks, if you sample, would you do it in mono most of the time? Drums, for instance? I oftentimes I sample in mono because most I use for sample is the OP1 that just samples in mono.
All have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God.
I'm just going to shut up for a second and then to talk about this piece.
Which divides nation from nation, race from race, class from class. Father, forgive. The covetous desires of people and nations to possess what is not their own. Father, forgive. The greed, which exploits the work of human hands and lays waste the earth. Father, forgive. Our envy of the welfare and happiness kindness of others. Father, forgive. Our indifference to the plight of the imprisoned, the homeless, the refugee. Father, forgive. The lust, which dishonors the bodies of men, women and children. Father, forgive. The pride, which leads us to trust in ourselves and not in God. Father, forgive. Kind to one another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another as God in Christ forgave you.
This track, I mean, personally this is one of the most important tracks that I wrote, and it happened when I visited Coventry, after visiting Coventry. So, for those of you who don't know, Coventry was one of the first cities in England that was completely flattened by the German Luftwaffe in the Second World War. And they called it Operation Moonlight Sonata, which is a horrible title. And yeah, Goebbels, the propaganda minister, even went so far as to call the process of flattening a city to Coventrise. So when I visited that city to play a show there last year, it felt strange. Like to see this city that had seen a major redesign by the German Air Force, that was very different. And I had a great tour guide who showed me like the beauty of the brutalism, the brutalistic architecture that is all over Coventry. And he was rather sad that these bold, big buildings were being torn down in favor of something, modern with, designed in a modern style. So it felt very special, and I played a show there that still sticks with me because I did stuff that I've never done because I felt I had to make this, special. And I had a few hours off before I got back on the plane, and I went to Coventry Cathedral. And Coventry Cathedral was, of course, also completely bombed down. And the building that is now in there is just one of the most beautiful buildings I've ever seen. And there is an amazing glass window. And I think the artist just called it a blast of glory, and it looks like that. In the video that I made to this track, which is called Forgive, you can see that I tried to capture both the brutalism, the architecture, I tried to capture that window, I tried to capture the play of light. And when I went in there, there was this regular daily sermon going on, and that's called the Litany of Forgiveness. And that was written in 1955, I think, and it stems from the word forgive that was written on the near the cross of the bombed out cathedral. And basically do you call it an abbot? Probably. The abbot of the cathedral immediately didn't call for like revenge, we have to destroy, we have to burn everything. No, we have to forgive. Became the whole motto of this. And I felt incredibly humbled, and luckily I had my little recorder with me, and I recorded the priest. I'm probably messing up all these denominations and what they're called, priest, preacher. I'm not a very religious person, so I don't believe in God or anything, but I believe in the power of human expression and the beauty of it and the power of forgiving. I really think that's such a superpower that if you apply it, it helps a lot. And I put out this recorder and I record just in time. I hit record and I recorded him. And if this record suddenly disappears at some point, and if the vinyl has still, and it will be because I couldn't clear that sample. Basically, I tried to contact them. I wanted to, is this okay to have this field recording in here? They never answered me back. So if you want this vinyl, it may be good to grab it now before they say, no, you have to take this all away. No, but I don't think they will, because I hope this piece does the topic and the whole, what they're trying to achieve with the Coventry Cathedral, the whole idea, I hope it does it justice. So that is why this is one of the most important tracks for me. And yeah, I love Coventry. It's really, really a good city. Okay, so I'm just gonna look at the chat for a second before we go to the side 2. Safe Nathan, how many albums are you expecting to release this year? You've been ridiculously productive. I think just one. There's just gonna be one more, maybe a second one, but that's more planned for January. I think just one more will be enough, and a very special thing, like a very small, very limited thing that I'm also working on. And nice to. Yeah, does IBB block? Yes, you can buy the release now. It's on Bandcamp, and I guess you are in Germany, so you can get it from Seil Records, or you can buy it at Patchpoint, which is right now the only store that carries the copies. Hey Hamburg, should I make physical copies of my songs? Oh, that's completely like, if you're selling like a lot of digital, that's good. But also one thing, like, I liked starting out with tape, because releasing a tape took a lot of the pressure away of releasing something physical. I could just self-dub. Like, I just bought 20 cassettes of good quality from a guy on a forum from Greece, dubbed 20 tapes, and yeah, put out a release, made a cover by printing it on a, what's it called? Yeah, printing on a photograph, cutting that to size. And that was just something nice to put on Bandcamp, sell as merch, or just to give people, because it's so nice to say, hey, I've got a new tape. Oh, but don't have a player. And you say, yeah, there's a download code, and you can just give it away. So it becomes like a thing where you basically have like, what do you call, Visitenkarte, I think a business card or something, like a musical business card. For that was the role of the tape before it actually turned into something that people bought, and I could make just, I don't know, a few $100 with. So I think it's a good thing to just have it, and then yeah, here we go. So you can dub it yourself. It's pretty easy. Okay. Yeah. Alfonso, I'm just gonna call you Alfonso. Sorry, I'm not gonna try. Romero I can do, but I try. Rui Palacios, I hope. Sorry, buddy. Do you have any multi-track tape recorders? No, except for the amount, like 4 tracks that I have. I don't have a multi-track recorder, and it was too much of a thing for me to get into. So I multi-track in the DAW, and I usually only multi-track like 4 or 8 tracks. So oftentimes I track to a stereo, and then I do 1 or 2 overdubs. So stereo mastering machine, and then overdubs. So that's all. So I'm gonna put on side 2. Trying to remember how I made that track. I can't right now for the life of me. It's interesting. But I can hear the OP1 that's gonna come in a bit, which I finally repaired now, and I'm planning on using again. Magenta 1010. That turntable was just 25 bucks. So this is really a really basic one. It's an Akai, just see, Akai AP006. There's not much you can do with it, but it just kind of works. Yeah, the OP1 is heavily in that track. If you can hear those strings, those are from an orchestra piece that I wrote, and that was before YouTube times, so I don't have like any documentation except for maybe one or two early Instagram pics and a really bad recording done on a stupid recorder because my main mics broke because they were, again, old and beautiful, but also old. I love old things, old quality things, but yeah. So I took lots of parts from the rehearsal, and it's just a tiny piece that the string section played, and I turned it into this string sample, and that's all over my records because it connects me to the space where I could hear all the individual musicians practicing as I approached it, my piece, like scattered into all these different parts because everybody was playing every part at the same time. It was very confusing, but I could pick out everything and I was like, I wish I had recorded also that approach because that was a truly magical moment. But yeah, so later on I could get through all these recordings, and I used these in so many albums. I used these, I made a lot of, like, the start of my ambient music, pure ambient career began with these samples, the OP1 and the Seattle Lombardi Coco Quantas. And this track kind of takes me back to this 2016 period. Mook Dog, hi, have you thought about a track diary, writing down instruments used in recording techniques? I've got the camera rolling on for most of the time now, so I actually have like the best documentation. I mean, for a while, like just simple like playing a line and just or something, and then recording it to the phone also took a lot of like documentation needs from me. But now that I've got the camera rolling on, I don't need to like write it down. I try to keep as much as possible in my head. That is why I'm horrible with spreadsheets and the whole organizing of everything. But I try to keep everything in my head. I don't know, it's just a thing that I found useful when I was studying, not to write anything down, just read everything from as many angles as possible and keep it in my head and try to put it in deep. Yeah, that's the challenge I do for myself, so that's why I never write anything down. When I do, I'm always like, I should have done that earlier, but no, writing down is not something that I do usually. Gaetan, you like the OP1? Have you used the pocket operators? Yes, and I've got two of them. I've got the melody one and I've got the vocoder one, and I don't like either of them. I really don't like the feeling, how they hold in my hands. I tried it. I really tried to like them, but something about touching them just makes me go, ugh, nah, it's not for me. I love the OP1, and I probably have to check out the OPZ at some point, but I really can't get with the pocket operators. I like what they do when I use them. I like them sonically, but the interface is what's always the final deciding factor in everything I do. Not everything I do, but everything, every music instrument, like final decision. Do I like the interface? Das IBB blog, did you use the PAR 2020 on this release? I probably have. That was on the track Alive in the Waking World in the bass. Yeah, that would have been. Yeah. again, this track, Memories Like Falling Leaves, which comes next. This is made entirely on test equipment using Tektronix Type 60 oscilloscope that has 2 square wave and 2 saw wave oscillators. And it's a piece that's like nothing, because I just listened to the sound of these oscillations and didn't do much. And that's why it's one of my most favorite pieces, because I didn't do much. I don't know if that makes any sense. Wave Ray 64. When you're making soundscapes like this, do any visual landscapes come to mind? Can you set the scene for us? Yeah, I always go for... You can hear the soundstage here if you have headphones or good monitors. There's something that's pretty close, which is almost like a stream, and then in the distance all these clouds billow up. But there's 2 distances of these. So there's one that's very, very wet, that's in the far into the side, and one that's more here. And the one that's here gives you like the information that you need, and the sounds on the back, they envelop you. And this is a very wide stereo spread here. That's due to the quadra verb, which does this wide spread, which I really love. And now come in the deep basses, which are of course the ground on which everything like sits. I hope they translate well. I tried to really set this upstream so it sounds good. In the test streaming it sounded good. I hope it comes through. There are tape recorded copies of these sounds, and I use these to create different pitches. And again, you get the very clean test equipment sound, and you get its tape recorded counterpart, and then you can pitch the tape recorded part down, and that creates a lovely texture. I don't know if I could ever have done this on a synthesizer with a keyboard, simply because I think my body would have felt too much the need to move. My fingers were like, I want to move. And I was like, no, you don't have to move. But I want to. Okay, move. I would have had triple the amount of notes, which wouldn't have done anything to make this better if there were triple the amount of notes. Here's probably one thing I always think of orchestras. I just think about orchestration, like what is my strings, what is my woodwinds, what happens when I combine the strings with the woodwinds. So I always imagine this orchestral space. Yeah, that's the oboe, or maybe a clarinet more. So there's always, in my ambient music especially, this idea of an orchestra playing this. And my first orchestra piece was something that I wrote by writing it first on the modular and then translating that onto notation with the help of my good friend Constantine. Yeah. drone radio, the Frippatronic playing technique is a very nice way to practice doing less. Absolutely. Frippatronics, yeah. I think now I might have finally a bit of space enough to set up my tape machines in a 3 or 4-way setup where I can do live tape Frippatronics. I've done it with 2, but I wanted, yeah, I think more's more in that regard. Christopher Jenkins. Now I'm on 3 C1 players, 1 C79, 3 handy cassettes. Oh, yeah. This looks... You have... Yeah, I mean, like, you have to buy all of them because nobody makes any good players anymore. So you have to buy them just to have replacements. Just run them, like, at least once a month, maybe, or every 2 months. Speaking of tape, this piece is from my first tape destruction video. Simon the Magpie challenged me to try destroying tape and recording something with that. And this is the part, like I think 15 or 20 minutes in, when the knives and the razor blades had scraped just a touch away from the original magnetic recording. And that's why it's called Before We Break, because after this was reduced to noise and so this is from that piece, and I'm really happy that it's finally found its home on vinyl. Jan de Ruyter. Usually talking of an ambient like record would be annoying, but your voice is just the right tone for it to work. I'm really, thank you. I'm trying to be with the music. Thank you, Richard Russell. I do live streams sometimes, yeah. Anti-Burn, one could release audio tape with this release. Softly talking over ambient tones, part 1, the remix. Alfonso, do you prefer your Nagras or Telefunken reel-to-reel? The Nagras are tools I use for experimenting. Not so much for recording, except for one thing that I'm gonna be revealing like in 1 or 2 weeks. And the Telefunken is just my main master recording. It's just that. I don't use it much for experimenting, although it's super nice to splice on it. It has the perfect splicing block, but I love it. I love it just to record on it. So, yeah, it's not preferred, it's just use one for this task and the other for the other. Does IBB blog, what do your children think of your music? It's complicated. Sometimes they like it, especially when it's got a beat or when it's like really scary, so it reminds them of their I don't know, their scarier audio dramas. But in general, music they sometimes see as like concurrence, like what's a concurrence? No, I'm drawing a blank here. Like it's competition to the time that I can spend with them. So I try to I have finally put the modular in a position like where the kids can also reach it and play with it, and I try to let them play with stuff. So and I usually have a microphone for looping up so it becomes something playful. And in the living room I put up just a tiny little synth setup so they can have fun, and I put a guitar there so they have all the options but they're not forced, so except for piano lessons. But so I think the competition thing is probably something that I'm trying as much as possible to avoid now and try to integrate them, but it's difficult. Like kids in a recording studio, especially if you've got video here, like all these lights on these flimsy stands, this is a nightmare. Oh, we're already at the final track, and this is made with Wouter van Veldhoven, and a great Dutch musician. And the echoes that you're hearing are actually from a Russian wire recorder that I just bought, but he already had, and he introduced me to this beautiful unit. So that makes something of the special sound. And he plays that, and a very simple Doepfer modular, like just this pling plonks, and they get all their character from that wire recorder and a tape, also used as an echo, I think. And I'm playing the iPad through, playing Quanta on the iPad through the Seattle Armada Coco Quantas, which makes these melodies and pads. And now I notice this interesting stereo separation where it's like I'm left and he is right, so you can like almost define who is playing right now. So yeah. Cheers, Wouter, to the beautiful track. Happy that we're on an album together. These headphones are from Meze Audio. They sent me these to try out, and these are closed back, so that's why I use them for this, because the headphones that I use for mixing, I can't, the cable is stuck under there, but they're here. Yeah, you can see the Cybertruck of headphones somewhere here. These are open back, so I can't use them for tracking, and they would bleed if I went like this. You would hear feedback, so they're not meant for that. So I use these. They're very comfortable. I really enjoy them. I recorded a lot with these on holiday, and they work fine. And they got detachable like thingies here, so you can detach each of the what's it called, jacks, which is for me who's always stumbling over my headphones perfect, because then it's not like this brutal ripping of something. It's just plop, drops out. Oh, okay, perfect. Good quality headphones. I kind of wish they were less blingy, but it's good to have something that's not all black, because yeah, I tend to lose all my studio gear somewhere, especially lens caps, because everything is black and black and black. So really good headphones. They have the same problems as any closed back, I find, like that you tend to overdo it on the bass, and that you can't really read like the lower bass region correctly. There's always a guessing game, but that's a thing with headphones you have to learn anyway, and you have to reference a lot. So, but yeah, I really like these. Where did you cut the master vinyl? That's a question for Jogging House. Where was the master vinyl finally cut? Was it Rund Music again? I don't know. So, Jogging House, please. Dear Rita, are there more people like Wouter in this album who deserve a listen from us? There's basically, you can check out the whole, they're not on this album, but you can check out the whole Seil catalog. I really enjoy everything that comes out there, and also DAUW, on which Wouter also releases. DAU, I think. Very, 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 very beautiful small label, and I just bought the R. Benny mega set from them, 4 vinyls, everything. That was a hefty bit of vinyl, but yeah, I really love it. And in regards to people on this album, this is the only collaboration track on here. Yes. The Toombies. Did you find any non-real tape effects like on Thyme or tape like recording workflow and Obi-Wan inspiring in the same way as real thing? Different things. Like, I just played a lot with the Alexander Effects Radical Delay, and I liked it because it has this arpeggio mode, so that's something I can't really do with tape. I mean, Wouter could probably do it with his multi-headed tape machine, but yeah, so there's stuff that I like in digital delays that inspire me, similarly as tape does, but it's different. It's just a different thing. And the unit effect unit that inspired me the most recently is the Eventide H through 3000, which I bought as like a 20-year-old dream, making that come true. And I'm still just surfing through the presets and finding stuff. I wonder how everybody ever made anything like themselves on that, because it's just so much beautiful in there. Yeah, just more, that's that wire recorder. That wire recorder lends a really old school aesthetic to it. And that's why I needed to have one, because it just sounds like nothing I've ever heard. So yeah, thanks Walter for introducing me to this piece of equipment. So this album is now done. Thank you all for listening all the way through with me. And yeah, before we decide what we're gonna do next, I would just love to get through a few questions that I got asked by everybody who supports What I Do on Patreon. And Patreon is, of course, like, I know every YouTuber says in the end now, yeah, support What I Do on Patreon, but it really is the thing that keeps you independent. It's just that, because this makes it so I don't have to do Raid Shadow Legends or use ExpressVPN or any of these other things that you hear like ad nauseum. Patreon makes this whole thing very, very sustainable for me. So the show ain't over. I just want to address a few questions. And one question I would like to give this through the chat: should I just do this in quiet, or shall I put on maybe this record again, or gestures? Just let me know. Vote for gestures in the background, no music, or put on the record that was released today. So again, what kind of art out of music do you consume? Oh, I love poetry. Poetry would be the first thing. Like, I love reading poetry books. And then paintings. I'm a huge fan of Caspar David Friedrich. I love his pictures. And Richter. Also love Richter. So these are two that just spring to mind. Gestures. Okay. I think 3 people gestures. Light splitting again. Once. 2 gun. Gestures. 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 Light splitting. Gestures. Gestures. Bobby LaChapelle, I'm going to get to that question. Remind me of that, please, again. So, okay. It's Gestures, which is now sold out, and I think the last copies will probably be then at Patch Point. And I don't even know if I have some left that I could sell live, because last time I was in Norway before this whole thing got strange. I think I sold out of them, but I'll have to check if I had that. I can just, maybe some future live shows I can sell again. So let me just take this and take this. Now I'm putting on gestures and we'll be answering questions. So just 1 second for me to put the vinyl back into his case. Back again. The one thing that's trippy about gestures is always the way the stereo panning works. That's the way, like, the Seat Lombard instruments that I played this with, this setup there, the stereo space is the acoustic body of the instrument. So that's why it's like panning like mad, which can be a bit difficult when I try to use these things, like these music for like something like a theater play or a score, where I, of course, incorporate tracks that I already did. And to answer a question that was before, yes, yesterday I just went to Potsdam, and because I got commissioned to write the score for Schiller's Maria Stuart with the director I've been working with for a long time. It was very weird because everybody was like, you don't know what happened in 2 days. So all this planning feels really strange, and then you go into a theater space and you see like a place that used to house like 350, 400 people, just like 99 chairs spread out. Really weird, but the play would fit because it's about, it plays mostly in a prison, so you can completely work with all the restrictions, like the actors have to be distanced, and they or face shield you have to wear, so they have to, it would work in a way. It's not possible to adapt like older productions that much, but this could work. But I'm fully expecting that it might just all go into like no shows, no nothing. But let's err while erring on the side of caution. It's nice. I try to be also hopeful that it could be fun. So before I'm going to answer some questions that were sent in to me by the people on Patreon, and after that I'll go back to your questions, if that's fine with you, please. And you can also, of course, like ask questions to these questions on top, but just to keep it on topic. Lower the volume a bit. So else I'm gonna read like the questions and the chat. That might be a touch confusing. So Fabio Neves, what is the second best bass drum you were talking about on Twitter? I wrote on Twitter that I discovered the second best bass drum, and the first one being, of course, the Rohde & Schwarz UBM. But I also said I'm not going to talk about it, and I'm not going to talk about it until I make a video, and maybe more. So it's just a super cool test equipment thing that I found that sounds like, it does sound like the second best bass drum, and it's just great. So yeah, it will be out at some point, but for this once I like to keep a little secret. Elia Lehmann, she linked a video, or he, I can't watch that now, but one day could you play in a band factory and process the resonate bodies you play with bandpass filters and reverb and shoot a video naturally? Oh, I would love to. That sounds totally like something for Atonal. I would love to do that. Absolutely. I did a similar thing when my wife still ran this place called König Otto. Made a video on impulse responses on that, which was an old brewery and had all these old tanks. But I never got around to banging on the tanks themselves, simply because there was an active brewery downstairs and they were working late into the night, so I didn't want to bother them. I am the Cobalt. So what's the deal with lock-in amplifiers? Lock-in amplifiers are these are tools that are, there's a full video on that which is called like the Nuclear Instrumentation Modular, but there's a great comic that explains how they are, and I encourage you to just watch that comic that I narrated together with my nephew. It's just funny because they just, like, the company that developed the lock amplifier first, Princeton Applied Research, had to explain to people how it worked, and the setup they came up with was, there was a super proficient scientist that was frozen for 20 years, was unfrozen, and then got tasked by his new boss to do all these things. He was like, this is not possible, I can't do this. But then they say, oh no, this company called Princeton Applied Research has this new thing called lock-in amplifiers. These are tools made to basically listen to the tiniest of voltages and the tiniest of sounds, probably with more voltages. Like, you can probably go into brainwave, analyze brainwaves and particles, like splitting with that. And they do that by using a bandpass filter, so you can cut through all the noise, a really sharp bandpass filter. And they've got a reference oscillator that you can tune to exactly that frequency you're looking in, so you can lock it, and then you can adjust the phase of that frequency, and then you can display that on a scope and have it exactly, okay, so this is what happens when I do this, this is what happens when I do this, and you cut through all the noise. And the great thing is, once you ping them, these incredibly powerful amplifiers, like 200 decibels, we're talking 200 decibels here at least, they resonate, and the filter resonates, and it becomes brutal basses of very fine trance sounds. And lock-in amplifiers are like, in test equipment regards, they're the kings basically. And if you are looking for a local amplifier, the best ones are those with the big knob. That's basically the good rule to go. Is if it's got a big knob, it's non-digital and it's analog, and you don't have all the automatic options that make the scientist's life easier but the musician's life worse. So, Liam Freiwald. What was it like trying to translate the analog test equipment setup into the digital format of Fundamental? How was the design process for the work between you and Xenon go? That was such an interesting process. Basically, Xenon came to me first and said, "Do you want to develop an oscillator with me?" And I said, "Yes, a good idea." And then I showed him the test equipment and played it live for him. And I had a very complicated idea, which in the end we had to simplify because it was going all about like resonances into vacuum tube bandpass filters. But when we decided to focus on that one oscillator, it started to become clear. I was from the beginning thinking of an interface that wouldn't be played with a keyboard, and Xenon said no, people will want a keyboard. And of course he was right. Some people wanted to play a keyboard, to play melodies with it, but I said no, let's not do a keyboard. And he tried it with the keyboard and said, you're right, it's better with like this interface that we came up with, this mixer interface. And then I recorded, basically deep sampled everything, and he found all these ways to make it actually sound good. And there was a whole lot of testing involved, and to find the right balance between like analog sound and no aliasing. And yeah, that was all his work. I was just there to test, this sounds weird, this sounds good, and he just did all the work. And then he added his modulation section, and from then on it was mostly like discussing like how to make everything very UI wise very clean, or as clean as possible, and that the presets, for example, that for me these are meant to be like tick 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 tick. Later, hopefully in the iPad version that is hopefully coming at some point, you can just like tick 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 play it like parts in a score. That was an idea which it was really fixed on, and he found a great way to make it work. So yeah, so it was a really good back and forth, and there was never one point where we were stuck. So there was never that point. And yeah, I felt I was good. Of course, the only thing, like, I didn't want, what's it called? iLok. And I said that from the beginning on, but he has his whole business built around the platform. And it doesn't make sense for one product to skip it. It would have added like months of development time. So yeah, that's why that was there. And yeah, I had to live with it, but it turned out fine. I kind of like lost the fear of iLok, which I had before, because it just worked fine with Fundamental for me, at least. So, especially because you don't need like a physical dongle anymore. So if you've got any questions to this, I'm just gonna take a small drink, and then you can ask in the chat, and then or else I'll move on to the next question. I don't know how long the delay is between me saying something here, probably like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Okay. I'm a boo, I look, yeah. I know, I've heard that choir a lot. That's something I couldn't change. So, Phanopoia. What does one have to do to acquire an E-Wave metallic resonator? If acquiring one just isn't possible anymore, which their site would have me believe, how would someone go about recreating one? Yeah, that was something I said, like, instead of like paying me to do like an overview over your synthesizer, just could I have this one thing that I wanted to buy when I had no money? Like, do you have like a metallic resonator left? Because I was fascinated by that thing when it came out. But there was a point where I had absolutely no money to buy it. And they said, we got some parts lying around, so yeah, let's do it. And they build one from like the rest of the parts that they had there. And I think for them it's a very time-consuming process. So that's why they're not producing them anymore, because they would have to be much more expensive, I think, than at what they came out. But you can build one yourselves, and I know people who've done so, like Benjamin Flesser. He works at Schneider's and he's the artist who also releases beautiful music. He built one himself, and he took a much bigger gong and a bigger what's it called, you need basically it's just a gong, and you hang it into a box so it's as free ringing as possible. And then you need these things, I think they're called exciters, which are speaker like they induce vibrations. These are like these things where they always claim that, yeah, just put this thing on your window and you can play music through that. You can buy these for 40 or 50 euros, and then you use this, put it on the gong, and add a power supply, and you can build your own. I had plans to build my own for such a long time, but I never got to it, because you still need to build a wooden box, and so you need kind of like a bunch of tools. And I think there are tutorials out there how to build your own metallic resonator. I remember reading about one tutorial on Muff Wiggler. There was a very good one. So check on Muff Wiggler for the whole tutorial. Transducers. Bruno Wiebel, yes. Bruno Wiebel. That was crazy. Why was that blocked? Transducers? Why would YouTube block the word transducers? All right. Probably some false, I don't know. Okay, so transducers are these things, exactly. Okay. Oh, and the mini Marvin from Morph Beats is my next purchase. Oh, Marvin. I love it. I still love it. I have a very close relationship with the instrument, because this is a percussion instrument that looks like a cowbell from hell with all kinds of stuff stuck to it. And I had one that I used for a performance at Bauhaus, and I basically was using it to control crowds by doing rhythm, dong, dong, dong. It was really heavy, but it was fun, like, to be in this masked, kind of cobalt blue outfit with hoods on, and just direct people to all the things in the Bauhaus that are not original but that keep us safe, like the fire extinguisher, or the disabled toilet, like a new thing, or like the fire, like the first aid kit that's there, or all these other things that we take for granted in modern buildings, but they're not original, and so they wouldn't have been in the Bauhaus when it was built. I'm going to move on to the next question by Trey Milner. 2.5-part question here. When trying to add organic sounding space to a sound, I often prefer the sound of using a mic placed far off to record the original audio played from a speaker in an open space, to give the illusion of it having been performed there, over using a reverb plugin, as they often have a tonal character that I get tired of. What are your thoughts on this reverb technique? Too much work? Really cool way to get creative? Or maybe the plugin's character is something you prefer? One of the best things you can do to any sound is just put some air through it. And that's between put it into the air. Let the air vibrate and then we record it. I've got amps here that I run my synthesizers through, and I really love what I'm getting from them. It helps just to re-record that. And it can also be nice if you've got to take the microphone outside of the studio and try to record what comes from there. So I love reamping or re-recording the signals and reverbing them that way. It's a very special, very natural sound. That said, I've also fallen in love with some algorithmic reverbs, like the Quadraverb or the Elasis Wedge, or the ones in the Eventide, and of course the Valhalla plugins. They've got a character that I really enjoy. So this is basically just different colors of reverb. How do you feel about Tim Hacker? I like him, and he's one of the artists I would love to see live, and I haven't seen, which is kind of crazy, because I mean,
He's been in Berlin a bunch of times, but I would really love to see him live, because that's supposed to be an amazing experience. But probably because I didn't see much live, because yeah, I've got 2 kids, very young, so the only time most of the time when I can go out live, it's when I play myself. So, and if I play a lot live, then there really is not much time for me to go out and see other people play live. It's kind of sad. 2.5, why is so much of your music not on Apple Music? It isn't? I haven't checked. I'll have to check that. I usually upload like with DistroKid my own stuff, so and Apple Music should be a default. So I don't know what happened there. I'll have to check. So okay, going to side B. I think we're halfway through the questions of the Patreon. Heimbach is 2 seconds away from making a sequel to I'm Sitting in a Room. Yes, of course. That's one thing that I love talking about in my videos is that's why the part about Halim El Dab was so important about the video about the wire recorder for me, or why Stockhausen is important to me. Like, talk a bit about music history and put stuff into connection. So an Elvin Lucier video would just be fun. But I think didn't Lookman on a Computer do one? Didn't he? I think he did in the church. So you might like to check that out. So I don't want to copy Sam. So if he did it, I would have to find another way to do it. That would be Heinbach. Oh, next question is very interesting. Jacob Stevens. I've just been asked to score a somber indie game that takes place in rural Africa. Being a non-African American, I wasn't raised with any notion of traditional African music. I want to invoke the feeling of Africa without stealing their musical traditions or pretending that I've been trained in them. How would you approach this? Would you use their traditional instruments, study the rhythms and scales, or simply write the music in your own way? A tricky balance. It is indeed a tricky balance. I think I have a video that's called Scoring an Animated Movie, and I talk a bit about that because this movie takes place in South Africa. It's a short, and I think it should come out soonish, I hope. And it's about a township and urban development, basically, and you see a man who tried to defend a tree for the longest time. So you get to learn a lot about history. And I got contacted by the editors and the director because they wanted to use my music in that film. And that was really interesting because I didn't think I was doing African music, but I was using a lot of mbiras. And I had read the book The Soul of Mbira, so I tried to play it in a way that this is. So basically, in The Soul of Mbira, you learn how... It talks about the philosophy of playing the mbira, which is so much away from the colonial concept of the thumb piano. It's about a conversation between a family, between a father on the bass notes, on the medium notes, a mother, on the high notes, a child. And once you try to play that instrument that way, it feels like it's alive. And so that's basically what I tried to do, and then I combined that with, I think, a lot of Stuart Lombard and Metasonic's D100 beats. And that was something these South African artists, filmmakers reacted to. And I've met Sola, and it was lovely talking and feeling like doing something that is what's that? There's another word, like when you take over, I think you said it. It's not like stealing or appropriating. I think appropriating is the word. Not appropriating a culture, but taking parts of it and making it in your own way while doing respect to the original. So in this somber indie game place, I would use the skills that I learned from the book The Soul of Mbira, play the mbira, and combine that with my own way of making music. This way fusioning into something new without like pretending to be something else. Or I would try to invite African American not African American, African musicians to play on that. I think there's an interesting podcast called Song Exploder, and they talk about doing that for, now I'm gonna probably get flamed, that Marvel, or was it a DC movie? I'm not really watching these movies about the black superhero. I'm drawing a blank here, but there's a really interesting podcast about how they the composer went out and recorded with African musicians and used that in the score, which is of course a major Hollywood score. So yeah, that would be a good way. In that podcast, you might also see like that one of the coolest parts of what the African musician did, that was simply shouting out the name of the bad guy that he was that was basically making the music for, that didn't make it into the soundtrack, because it would have been very obvious in a Hollywood soundtrack, which is all about this, being non-noticeable but being uplifting, and but then having someone shout the name of the bad guy would just not fit. But I still thought that was the most powerful musical gesture in that recording. So Black Panther. Was Black Panther? Yeah, that's very, very, very enlightening. So to watch that. Michael Southard, aside from your Codex album you made for the YouTube audio library, have you worked with any other music library companies or have any experience with sync licensing? Not really, but I'm actually talking to one, and that's something where I'm very much like, I've got an entertainment lawyer, and he's doing the explanation for me, because it's an English company, and the way copyright is handled in the Anglo-Saxon world is so much different from European world. There's some things that are simply not possible or not thought of, like selling away all your rights, and you've got no right to your songs anymore, your music anymore. That's something that's just not possible. You've always a moral right in Europe, at least in Germany. So that's interesting. I learned a lot from that process, but it's an open process, so I can't really talk about it, how it's turned out or how it's gonna be. So can't say anything more about that. So my voices are getting a bit sore. Haberman, hey Heimach, you briefly mentioned something about making music with fruit or plants using the field kit. There's a video on the sensors, and you can basically use crocodile clips on a sensor and then turn any conductive surface into an instrument. So I tried it with the grapes, so then you can set a value for the sensor, and so every time you touch the grape you get a different CV voltage. It's kind of absurd and fun. So that really works well with the sensor pack for the original field kit. Okay. Andreas Weinitz checked. Everything of Heimbach seems to be on iTunes, just the new one missing. Okay. Mixed tracks. Are there voice recordings on this track? Yeah, that's my family talk in the background, because I recorded this in the Black Forest at my mother's home, and I just put a dictaphone up on the piano and recorded, so you can hear my kids and my wife and my mother talking in the background. Yeah, that's my oldest daughter Ada. I love when live bleeds into recordings, and when you can discover all these little things in other people's recordings, when it's not sterile, and when you get this small view into an artist's life. That's one of the beauties of microphones, and having them open and just letting it run while you're doing something interesting might pop up. So especially with the OP1, I sometimes go outside and let the microphone at a certain level on and record that into the music that I record. Such lovely results, and it invites chance and happy accidents. Phil Durant, in the last Q&A, you talked about wanting to make an album of hopeful, uplifting music, hence assertion. Do you think it's possible to make such an album with just sound, noise, field recordings, or do you have to think more in terms of melody harmony? It's easier with melody harmony for me, because melody and harmony are like, there's straight up functions basically, how to do like an upward movement and how to convey different feelings. There's a whole legacy of learned sound and learned experience. Learned experience. But it depends on your recordings. If you've got something that's happy and you don't contrast it with something sinister, you can absolutely make something something interesting. And I think if you work somehow, like, we don't even have to talk harmony, we can just talk like non-beating relationships, which that sounds weird, but like when your frequencies don't beat against each other, so when they're clear or they beat against each other in a pleasant way, such in a major third, then you can very much do something maybe, yeah, hopeful, definitely. But of course, it is a bit harder to do than when you use the like a piano, like in this track. But I think if you look at it, something like light splitting on this was made entirely, with sine tones. It does feel hopeful to me, but I can't separate the thinking of harmony and sound from my music making. So I can't just separate that. It's just such an integral part. So I don't know how much of this is just me listening to the sounds and how much is ingrained feeling for the harmonies that I like. Part 2. Isn't it up to the listener whether ambient music is listened to or just as a background? Definitely, of course. But I think there's some music that is very much made with the intention of being background music. So, I mean, music especially that is made to, made to resemble like rain sounds or something. There is music that has the definite intention like that. Mozart comes to mind, and lots of parts of ambient music don't invite any form of tension or narration in it. So I feel like if there's a narration lacking, if it's more just to be these static sounds, which I sometimes use, of course, for theater scoring, where there's just fill this up, make like boo, and maybe a da, and then just use that to create tension, or to just fill a scene. There's more real ambient, real like music is furniture, music is something that's just supporting something. It's about the role and the intention of the artist. And then, of course, it's up to the listener again to interpret that intention, as with any piece of art. If a listener really tries to deep listen and go into these sounds and find something in them, of course, then it's not, then it's something different. But that's the interesting thing about art, I think. So there's the intention of the author, and then there is the reception of the audience. And in between that, you find maybe truth. So it's never a either or. Yeah. I hope that answers your question. Andreas Weins Heimbach would be so great for sync licensing. Yeah, that's why I'm talking to them. They were really happy about that. So let's see what happens. Does IBB blog, when will the next single mode synthesis take place? We haven't, like, it's still like kind of holiday mode here. Like for me, school hasn't started in Berlin, and we don't know how school will look, and I basically don't have much time. So because my wife is already at work, and I have the kids most of the time. So all these things like this I squeeze in the night time, or try to do like early in the morning. And so yeah, we'll see, like if like life goes a little bit more regular after the holidays next week. We are planning on restarting in August, so yeah, probably mid-end of August. Analog Weapon. I think Brian Eno put it well. Ambient music must be able to accommodate many layers of listening attention without enforcing one in particular. It must be as ignorable as it is interesting. Good. Yeah, that's of course. When in doubt, ask Brian Eno. Yeah. Why didn't I never... Anyway, I'm completely new to making music. I have a small collection of instruments, one of which is a homemade oscillator bank that I run through my Monotron. That's a lovely instrument. That sounds cool. I want to hear that. My question is this. When you come across a phrase that makes a great loop or addition to a piece, how do you capture and save it? On tape? Yes. I've got like... I love like when I find these things... I've got these boxes, white boxes where I put my tapes in, and I store them in behind me there. I can't see it there, but there's like a library of all these like tape loops, and I love storing it in there, or I put it onto the OP1. As you can hear, I'm kind of warming up to the OP1 again since I basically cleaned it, repaired it a bit. So I love storing sounds in there, or I never so much do sound packs or like for my personal use, mostly only for patrons. And I don't like catalog stuff like on the computer, but I like these small devices like a dictaphone with a tape loop. I got this, very nice. Or just a portable recorder, where I usually tend to forget it because there's so many sounds on there, like a digital recorder. Or yeah, the OP1 is pretty great in that regard for just capturing something simple and turning it into music. I lose myself in Fundamental for hours finding new sounds. Thanks, Emma. That's good. Thank you. Thank you, Speedstar. Thank you. Glad that instrument resonates with you. Excuse me. Jose Haya. I love Fundamental, but I'm finding it very hard to mix the sounds that comes out of it in a track. There are some really strong frequencies that I find really hard to handle. Any tips? There's one thing that I didn't show really in the video. There's a section called V-gain, which is virtual gain. And I use that basically you can use that to balance the overall, like the analog gain. Because the analog gain is like the exact recorded gain when you press. And it means at some point I was turning the gain on the knob. So that's what's happening basically. So I'm turning it up when you press or when you up the volume there. But there's a virtual gain which is just clean digital up and down. So if you want to de-emphasize certain frequencies, sort of like the high frequencies, you can just use the virtual gain to de-emphasize those. So you retain the sonic character, like the timbre, the overtones of the original analog ones. I think it's the second fader, on the right side, it's the second of the faders, second settings. Ulrich Umlauf, do you listen to any music by others at all? And if, what are your favorites at the moment? Greetings from Music Lover. Oh, yes. There's one album that I want to share. And if you buy one album today, buy mine. It would be lovely to go I think it was on place 4 when I started this on Bandcamp. I would love to see it in the top 3. That would be a nice thing. But no, there's one great, let me check my Bandcamp list. No, that's Spotify. No, there is Bandcamp. That's the artist app. And here we go. So, and there's one album that I bought, and it's the Lo-Fi Raya by Space Gambus Experiment. I wonder, can you kind of see here? So, Space Gambus Experiment, this is such a beautiful album where he remixes old classics. I think he's from Manila. Am I right, or am I doing this wrong? I think he's from Manila, and he remixes all these old songs from the 50s or 60s, and he does boom bap behind it. But what he does beautifully is he keeps all those noises of the tape forward and rewind, and it that makes it so special. It makes it like a head-nodding experimental album. So this is at my highest recommendation. That was the one thing that I listened to for fun, for enjoyment, made me smile. So Lo-Fi Raya Mono by Space Gambus Experiment. Full of tape and lovely tape and boom bap. Really, get this. It's a great album. Okay, so I think we already went through gestures, and we still three more some more questions on the Patreon. So I think, because we're listening basically to 3 albums that I feel are kind of meant to be heard as part of one idea or one thing, I feel we could take a listen to the vinyl of Assertion, if that's fine with you. And yeah, I just got this like, when did this arrive? Last week. And I took the copies that I had to, most of them to Patch Point via bike. So let's put on Assertion. Das IBB blog can't wait for your stream on 30th of August with Dr. Ullmann about the analog computer. Yes, that's going to be magic. I'm so happy to have like the best minds work on that analog computer stream. I hope to learn so much. This is going to be fun. And I'm going to put up the link like end of this week so it doesn't interfere with the StreamYard things that I'm doing. Any questions? Portsmouth Symphonia, that Krista Packard, I need to check that out. Wasn't that like, that was Brian Eno in there, and wasn't it like the worst Symphonia orchestra? I read about it, but I haven't heard it. I still have to listen to that. Steve Buchan, do you prefer happy accidents or planned perfection? Why not both? I like to plan things and then be surprised, but the surprises are like, it's always nice to get a happy surprise, like just something. Oh, okay, I'm gonna make this mine. This is good. But I also like to do the things that I have in my head and put them into sound. That's like the preset, is to put the things I have in my head into sound. If something else comes up, it's lovely, but it's definitely a both situation. Kaspar Wohland, is there a sound you don't like or have a negative reaction towards it? I think that was a question that was asked that I answered once in a Twitter by the very good 20,000 Hertz podcast. And that's the one thing that the sound that was the worst sound in the world for me and that I never wish to hear again was when my 10-month-old daughter fell from a table onto concrete. That was the most horrific sound. And it was followed by the scream of my wife and then her scream. Her scream was good, like, because it knows, oh, she's still there. So she's still like conscious, and she was fine. So of course we went to the hospital with the in an ambulance, and she was basically, the next day she was already playing again. It was all good. Like, the head of a tiny kid is so like bloop, bloop, it didn't really register. But that sound, which I can only describe as being similar to a watermelon falling on the floor, that was the worst sound. And one sound that I never hope to hear again. What is your favorite Python IDE? Oh, I don't know what you're talking about. That sounds like programming. So, yeah, I have to see if the camera is still like, am I kinda in focus, or is it starting to lose focus? It should be better. Okay, So back to the Patreon. Ethan Hobson. Hi Heinbach. Lately I've been exploring the world of hardware samplers through... Oh, I think I'm probably too loud with the music a bit. Hi Heinbach. Lately I've been exploring the world of hardware samplers through my SP404 and loving the way it has influenced how I construct music. What was your first sampler and how did it influence your creative process? Casio SK1. Borrowed from my guitarist. And I used that to sample the radio. I used it to sample radio sounds because I didn't have a synthesizer, so I turned the radio to the left and there were all these bleepy bloop Euro signal sounds. And yeah, so that was how I got synthetic sounds to the acoustic sounds of the organ, or the organ wasn't acoustic, it was also like a PCM keyboard, but to the piano, and could use that with my band and in my music. That was my first synthesizer sampler experience. And when I got my first real synthesizer, a Roland GP8000, I tried to copy that sound, and I really couldn't, because the SK1 sampling radio wave just sounds super gnarly, and I couldn't get that gnarliness. And that's something I was so happy to find the Coco Quantus, which just does a similar kind of gnarliness. So, but that was, yeah, my first sampler. And about the Euro signal, which was my first synthesizer, I might have discovered a piece of test equipment that can do exactly these sounds, which have been lost since 1997. So, but I found a thing that can emulate these sounds, and well, was used to test these sounds. And I hope to, yeah, make a video on rediscovering my first synthesizer. I think I just need to borrow SK1 for that video to make it complete. Just a touch. Antipuranen, the video, that's assertion, yes. So, almost, oh, still like 5 more questions from the Patreons before we go back to all you guys. The Void Inclusive. My question is about getting stuff done. Do you have a daily routine, a creative routine? Are you checking things off a to-do list during the day, or maybe just adding notes in the calendar? Tuesday, mix Landstraße, Wednesday, edit the video. Do you set deadlines for yourself for music and video output? And how do you balance your studio time with family time? Thanks for your time with us. It's hard. I mean, I think I mentioned earlier that I don't really like to plan too much, or like, I try to keep everything in my head. And I do everything by deadlines. As soon as something has a deadline, it will get done. Things that don't have a deadline don't get done. It's simply like that. So I order stuff by deadline priority. And doing stuff in the studio, I mean, that's just fun. That's just so much fun. So I go here and start to create, so I don't need any reminder for anything of that. But for the other stuff, yeah, just like, okay, so this needs to be done by then, so this takes priority. I try to avoid like overlapping deadlines, and that can be so bad when you've got overlapping priorities and deadlines. And I don't tend to start work, which is very important, on something until it's confirmed that it's happened, until I've written a contract, or until the first payment was done. And before that, I'm happy to discuss like preliminary stuff, but I don't really read scripts. I'm happy to get the feeling, but before it's not sure that I engage, that it's gonna happen, I don't put any work in it, because I've seen it too much that this is oftentimes lost work. And family time, I basically stop and then play with the kids. And right now, I have the kids most of the time because, yeah, my wife is working. So, yeah, I try to take as much time, and not working on theater plays, like being at home for a long time, something we've all gotten used to, and they especially. And every time I go away for a bit, like just to patch point, to work on something, they're like, "Are you coming back?" I said, "Yes, I am," because they're used to me being away for 5 days a week for scoring. Jonathan Stone, having a single malt here in North Wales with you. That's when this is done, I'm gonna have one too. I feel like this might be perfect release day finisher. But I'm drinking right now. I'm drinking some lovely French. Oh God, I'm gonna botch this again. Chenin. So yeah, I've got a small wine store up the street that I get my wine from. Will Ogborn, do you have any tips for cross-patching the Plumberger into the Coco Quantus? Any general Seat Lombardi tips? There are some cool stuff that you can do, like patching the ultrasounds and having them modulated by the LFOs on the Coco Quantus. Try that, you'll have a good time. There's while sending triggers to the Coco Quantus from the orange outs. You can have a very good time. It can sound like a lock-in amplifier, which is something that I do live a lot when I can't bring a lock-in amplifier. Thank you, Paul. Thank you. So, Titus, I'm loving Fundamental, but I'm finding controlling it with the mouse a bit tricky. What MIDI controllers would you advise for it? Thanks. Yeah, that's easy, because we've been developing together, like with Seil, who made the Seil Morph with the Thunder overlay, and we've been developing with them like a interface, and we made options in Fundamental to use it with this interface, and I think it's about $300, and I love this because it's so slim, it just fits in any backpack, and you can really play Fundamental with it. And now, since version 1.1, it's optimized. This is definitely the best touch controller for Fundamental, and we got deals going on where you can buy Fundamental cheap if you have this for like $49, or you can the other way around, if you got Fundamental, you can get a code to buy this cheaper. So yeah, or a bundle, buy everything. So, but that's something that Xenon handles, so you can just write him for a code if you want to buy this, and you'll get, I think until the end of the month, I hope, get stuff off. I hope it's not over. Oh, and I'm just So anyway, this is the best. I'm just gonna answer a few questions from the chat. Who on earth was your inspiration to experiment with test equipment? Stockhausen. He was the first that I came across that when I studied, and the actual buyer's guide that got me was like a guide into what to buy, what's good, was by Dennis Verschoor. But the historic inspiration, which is the biggest one, came from Stockhausen, indeed, and discovering him during studies. I studied musicology in Hamburg. Christian Cabway, did you ever use tracker sequencers? Where is it? I'll get it. So, can you see it? If you try to make it perfect. Angle it a bit. Come on, focus, camera, focus. Yes. This is my original Pro Tracker disc from Amiga format, and I found it when I was cleaning up in my parents' home. And my goal is I actually want to buy an Amiga once I have a bit more space, when I build my workshop. And I want to buy an Amiga and play with Pro Tracker again, which I used. So this is my original disc from that. Yeah, it even calls samples, modules, and animations. So expect some demo style from me. This is gonna be so much fun. Does IBB block the bass on Humming is from the PAR 2020? No, that's from the Syntrax. But I ran stuff like that through a lot of test equipment. I'm gonna focus again. Krista Packard, ever played around with pure data? Nope. Steve Buchen, when you look at new test equipment item, are you considering its musical value or just the fact that you don't have one of those yet and hope to find musical value within? Both. There are some things that I buy like exploratory, and like 50% of the time I'm right, 50% it's just nothing. And I've stopped a bit buying too many of those, but yeah, sometimes it's gold and I just love it. Same as like the thing that is used to test the Euro signal. That's just too much fun to hear these sounds again. Michael Menedette, did you ever use the Tokotronic TR Valkyrie? That's a modified HP sine oscillator. I haven't used it, but it seems like a lot of fun. I think it's pretty expensive, but if you get someone to mod one yourself, it's probably similarly expensive. I would love to try it. It seems fun to take one of these old things and overblow it and see what you can do with that. Paul Kimazia Morgan, hi Heinbach, are you still planning your C45 compilation videos? Yes. Next one is coming. I mean, I just released like one with all the stuff that was made with isolation loops, and one with which will include some of the records from here and other records that I bought and stuff that was sent into me will come. I hope to record it like in the next 2 weeks, so should be out either late August or September. And if you've got tapes that you want to send me, just contact me via email. The email is all over my website, so it's a contact form and I can put it in there. I'm mixing now vinyl and tape, so cassettes. So it's not just cassettes anymore. So I've got a plan where I want to use like a lovely Telefunken M15 tape machine that was gifted to me, but right now it can only play and not record, so I still need to fix that. So, but else I record to an Agra, which was how I did the number 14 C45 release. Paul Chabot, what is your favorite patch in Fundamental? Of my own, but no, not. I think like the favorite one is from DivKit. I don't know the name, but it's one that goes rhythmically. Boom, 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 boom. And I was so impressed because I thought, how did he do that? How did he do this on the instrument that was playing a lot of times? And that was the first time I was blown away by what people would do with an instrument that I had developed. So that's my favorite patch. I think it's number 2 or 3 in the DivKit library. And you can get it from the DivKit website, and you can throw him a buck to get that set, but you can also download it for free. Any thoughts or experience with Roland's boutique range of classic synths? No, not really. I only had, what's it called? The SE02, which was a lovely synthesizer, which I traded for something else. I don't know what, but that was a very cool synthesizer, but not the other boutiques. One thing that I loved, not Roland, but the Yamaha CP, is it CP, that little Yamaha FM synthesizer with the speakers. I played that yesterday. That was lovely. That was a lovely little synthesizer, and that's something I would consider having myself simply because it just sounded good. An FM synthesizer that's portable, light, battery powered. Yeah, and has actually impressive speakers for its size. I enjoyed that one. But for the Roland boutiques, I haven't checked them out. I need to grab a glass of water. Just a second. Cody May, do you take criticism for your work still? Oh, no, I take criticism, but I love good criticism. Like, one thing that I learned about criticism is that you have to look at the person who's criticizing you and then see, like, what of this is something that I can see, what of this is opinion or like taste, and what is something that's technical. And there's a lot of stuff, like the best criticism, like, I work in an environment in the theater, hopefully again at some point, but where criticism is something that happens all the time. And criticism is very open and direct, and I love good criticism. So saying, you can try this, you can try this. There's a lot. There's like someone who's a good critic of your work is just hold that person dear to you and keep him with you. It's the rarest thing. It's really rare to find a good critic, and yeah, that can be such a fruitful relationship. So yeah, but as with always, you have to you take what you think works, and then you don't take the things you think, okay, no, this is my opinion, and or this is my way of doing things, and I do it my way because yeah, it's the way that I create. But yeah, good critic, man, awesome. Yamaha Reface DX is the FM one. Bromata, yes, absolutely. So, oh, that record is done. Switching to side B. All right, and back we go again. I think there's just 3 more questions. Jim Brandstetter, what touch controller do you recommend? Best bang for buck? Thanks, Jim. Yes. Jake Fodor. Again, I think we had that. The Sencil. I really enjoy this. For analog stuff, like the Surge Touch Keyboard is my favorite one. I really enjoy that. And the other thing, the Zero Control comes really close. Just doesn't have bananas, which is important. Torsten. Hey Heimbach, just joined that Patreon thing since I found myself binge watching your content on YouTube and thought I would contribute a little. Thank you very much. Just one question. I know you rarely do reviews on specific devices, but in some of your reviews you mentioned that you made a review on the Surge Touch Keyboard. As far as I remember, I would be very interested in that, since all the Surge stuff I own is excellent, but TKB is a monster, and I would love to hear some thoughts from an experienced user. Thanks in advance, GST. Yeah, that's something I really want to do, but I made a video on the random source La Bestia 2, and I'm still saving up to get a La Bestia 2 to really try, to work more with the touch keyboard, because I used it with that, and now I can only use it with the test equipment, but I kind of like keeping the test equipment away from other modular stuff right now, which is something I'm saying while I'm playing a track where like the test equipment and the modular and tape loops and all the other synthesizers are playing together. No, but interface-wise, so I'm basically waiting, saving up to get La Bestia 2, and then I can do a touch keyboard overview, because I already reviewed the La Bestia. But some notes are on the TKB on that video. 2 more questions from the Patreons. Chris the Packrat, have you ever had experience with something like the Bins and Acurac? No, but I'm looking at Soundgas very, very closely whenever they post one of these. And yeah, it seems like a very beautiful thing. I would at least try one. Just try and play with it. That would be lovely. Ken Shestock, last minute question. Now that you've had your no control for a bit, do you prefer it to the pressure points brains combo, or are they really 2 totally separate beasts? I've sold my pressure points and brains. So yes, I really enjoy no control simply because I've got more stuff in my portable modular, which sits over there and can be played by the kids, or I can take for holiday with me and then put just this little controller next to it, and it's so small that it's such a lovely addition. So I still think like there's stuff to be said to just have pressure points and brains, but to optimize space, I simply said no control, it's the way to go, and pressure points, yeah, just swap it. I think I swapped it for... What did I swap it for? Ah yeah, I swapped it for a PBO Rode and Schwarz Bandpassfilter. So, Lassit. Hi, thank you for all your great work. Thank you. 2 questions, if okay. Can you say a little about polyphonic synths, which you like, etc.? Juno 60 is my favorite polyphonic synth because it always works as a polyphonic synth, always fits in the mix, can take a lead role in a mix. It's the one polyphonic synth I don't want to be without. It's not a versatile synthesizer, but it doesn't need to be. It's just the perfect layer between all these experimental instruments. And whenever I put a little bit of Juno in there, there's just a touch of cohesiveness, and it makes every track better. I've yet to discover a situation where I say, nah, Juno doesn't work. It always works. So Juno 60, my favorite. DX7, second. And from the new ones, I really love the Novation Summit. But that is still going out for repair. I just need to fill out the UPS packet. And yeah, then it's back to me, and I want to work more with that because it's such a modern, powerful synthesizer, and it's such a welcome holiday from all the archaic stuff that I work with to just have this powerful keyboard synthesizer. Yeah. So those are the three that come to mind. And of course, then there are things like that are way out of pocket for me, like I had the Kijimi from Black Corporation on loan. That was fantastic, and I was sad when it had to go, but I tried to not fall in love with it because, yeah, out of my range. And I played with the Moog 1 at Thomann Synth Reactor. That's of course another thing. Lovely, but out of range. So, Deckard's Dream, another one. These are all these like, okay, I'm not gonna work with you too closely, or just we take your distance. It's just way too expensive right now. Beautiful synthesizers. Last question from the Patreons. It's the last one. Also, seeing as though Mr. Blasser gave you some homework, we can expect the Plumbutter video. That's not a question. Yeah, Plumbutter video. Yeah. Will come when school and stuff like is back, and I can actually work on videos like for a longer time and not just like a few moments here and there, which is kind of like how I've been working. And these talkies, these have to record it in like one take and then edit it, and yeah, that's very time consuming. Okay, that was the questions from the Patreons. So while we're listening to Assertion, I'm gonna go to questions from the chat. Thompson Taylor, have you ever listened to Godspeed You Black Emperor? A lot. I used to put on Lift Your Skinny Fists to Heaven like antennas and just tell my friends, hey, do you want to go on a trip? And yeah, okay. And I put it on, and then we just sat in the theater, not theater, the flat that we had next to the Reeperbahn back when I lived in Hamburg, and just listened to the whole record, and was like, whoa, I introduced a lot of friends of mine to Godspeed You Black Emperor, and I saw them live twice, and yeah, I love the way they tell the story with their music. So they're really favorite band of mine at some point, and the offshoot. What was the offshoot called? A Silver Mount Zion. They have this one track that sounds just like a sampled Casio voice, like much nicer than what I just did now, which sounds like some kind of curious cat. Yeah, I listen to that so much. Yeah, that really a sensibility in there that I enjoyed. Could you think of complete analog production like the guys from Bauer Studios do, for example, direct to disc? There might be something coming in that regard. Do you think analog and digital can sit well together, or do they clash? No, perfect. It's different timbres, so work perfectly together. So the one thing that I like to do with digital is high pass it. So leave the bass more for the analog stuff, because it's more solid oftentimes, except for some FM stuff, and use the digital like as and sprinkles and colors and moving flashlights in between, which is something like where I used the Summit for. I think they work. Brumata, there's a sample for you, Heimbach as Curious Cat. Yeah, probably is the other track in the background. When mixing your tracks, do you use a lot of EQ and compression? Often the synths have a lot of frequencies, and together they get muddy very easy. How do you deal with this in the mix? I mix analog, so there's much more headroom, and I've got EQs on hand, so EQs are I always use them, but I oftentimes get the sounds right in the sound design phase, because I structure them like as an arrangement. I arrange at heart. I love to arrange in the, that's vertical, yeah, that's horizontal, that's vertical. So I try to give the sounds already roles in the arrangement so they don't clash. But else, yeah, I use EQ and I use compression, but I use compression a lot on the master. I've got two compressors. I've got a buck branch stereo compressor, and I've got a Höf dynamic master as a limiter, and then I record the tape, which adds even more compression. But I always have these all just a touch, and that adds to like a mix into these basically, and that's a lot of part of the sound, especially on the more rhythmic pieces. 13 angels standing guard around the side of your bed. Yeah, that's the song from Silvermont Zion that I meant. Thanks, Old Bricken. Some water. Bruno, I think the Summit, I think maybe like it got a shock through the power line or something, because the power supply basically broke. That's it. Might have been because it's on a row with a bunch of test equipment, but you don't know how that happened. So it's gonna be fixed, and then I'm gonna explore it more. I found out now I have a Hoverman. I found out now I have a really ancient vacuum tube radio in storage, and I'd love to use it for music somehow. But I don't know how to sample radio in an interesting way other than brute force. I mean, what you could do is get one of those small FM transmitters, transmit your music through the radio, and re-record it. So then you've got any sound, and you've got the beautiful old speaker and the sound of the vacuum tubes. That would be a crazy cool reamping thing. Yeah. Or you could, of course, just use like some kind of like speakerphone or something by audio thing to emulate that effect, but doing it real is always nicer. FM transmitters are like really cheap, like $5 or something. So that could really work well. Going through more questions, trying to scroll up. For some reasons, I can't imagine Heimbach getting down on a Mofo, a Polyevolver, or a new Dave Smith synth really, but I can imagine he'd be a treat here in a session with a Tempest. Yeah, Tempest, I'm curious about. I had the Mofo, the small one, and that was a synth I really did like the. It was monophonic, right? The original one, yeah. I had that, and I really didn't like it. I didn't like the sound of it, but the Tempest seems always very interesting. And a friend of mine whom I make music with, Martin Ster, he's like a fiend on the Tempest, and he uses it a lot. It seems like a very versatile instrument, and I love when he just has Tempest and guitar. He can do some crazy good things on that. Yeah. What are some good venues for odd experimental music in Berlin, Hamburg, or München? I know Frameworks Festival and Frames in München, but not much more. Oh, there's right? I don't know if anything is even open, but there used to be Experimentag Mondays at Tante Renate? Is it Tante Renate? Yes, at Renate? I think? No. Where was Experimentag? Somebody from Berlin in the chat, please help me. And then there is AK-40. There's AK-44 in Karl Marx. It's called AK-44. No, KM-44 it's called in Karl Marx, which is more for like classical experimental music. Sowieso is more jazz side, and Ausland, West Germany are also places to check out in that regard. Time Rival. Hey Heimbach, did you ever get the cassette I sent to you for the C45 mixes? I would have to check. I got a bunch of cassettes, and I'm gonna check for the next C45 mix. So because the one previous wasn't made from cassettes, that was made from everybody used my isolation loop sound pack, so I didn't check. And yeah, I will check. Is it as Time Rival? Then I could give you feedback on it, but no. Basically, all the new tapes that I got, they will be in there. It might be longer than C45 though, or make two. That could be another thing. Make two C45 in one go. Krista Packrat, did you ever hear the instrumental version of Mantra for the Sound City, Doc? You can feel the energy between Trent, Ohm, and Grow. No. No, I didn't. No, I have to. Could be interesting. Raphael Zaremba, what is the weirdest signal equipment you still haven't got your hands on a plan to in the nearest future? I would love a Starkey hearing lab. So, I don't know if I should be telling this because people just gonna look and buy it. I won't never get one. Starkey hearing lab. It's like a modular synthesizer for hearing tests. And a fascinating story about the whole company also. But no, but that would be a thing that I would be very interested in. Just to play with it. And at some point, like maybe when I've saved up a lot, I would actually like to play like a Buchla. Just play like a Buchla at some point. That's just to know what it's about. I love to try all the synths at some point, just to know, just to be able to talk about them and to experience them and to get the knowledge and the feel for them. But that's not obscure. But it's obscure because it's so expensive. So, Madame Claude. Yeah, thank you, Michael. Thank you. Cool. Yeah. I will check. I would have to leave because my tape regal is over there, and I don't want to leave the chat alone. But if you send it, I probably get it. So, everybody, we're on the last song of the album, and I think after that I'm gonna call it a day. So, thank you very much for being here, and yeah, light splitting. That's gestures. Bad job. So, light splitting out now on Seil Records. You can get the vinyl and the tape on seilrecords.bandcamp.com, and the digital is pay what you want for the first 2 weeks. And I really hope you enjoy this record. I hate saying it's a special one because I say that to every album. I really haven't made one album where I say, oh, this is like a non-special one. Because, I mean, an album is like a good part of your life. It's a lot of time and effort and energy and work, and a huge part of yourself, myself in this case. So every album feels very, very special. Yeah, so check it out. It's available on seilrecords.bandcamp.com. I think the link should be in the description. This has been lovely. Thank you very much. Good song to play us out too. It's also a fun thing. What track do you put on the end of an album? And I think on Assertion I absolutely nailed it, because that was like, it really feels like letting go. And on Light Splitting is like, oh, there's more, because it's the collaboration with Walter. I wanted to give it like feeling there could be more, because it doesn't really end. The album Light Splitting doesn't really end, while Assertion is like, okay, this is done. But that also speaks more for the process of the intense period of time that Assertion was written, where it was, okay, no, it's good that this weird part is over, or this very intense period where I documented everything, the whole process of the album. Yeah, Assertion you can still get from my Bandcamp. So this album is still available on Bandcamp also, and it will be shipped from Chase Bliss. So this is available in the States, and if you want to buy it in Europe, and you can buy it from so this will also ship, of course, it will ship to Australia and many other places, but it's much cheaper for you to buy it for Europe from Patchpoint. Patch-point.com. There's a Heinbach section there where you can buy this one. So All right, everybody. Michael Malkov, that's a question you have to ask Jogging House, who's from Seil Records and who's been moderating today and doing a lovely job. Thank you, buddy, for doing this. Thank you for being here. Thank you for releasing the third album with me. And I'm looking forward to all the albums I'm going to be releasing with you in the future. I hope, everybody, I hope you had a good time. I think it's time for me to call it quits for today, else I'll be too tired tomorrow. And I got kids to play with tomorrow. So, thank you. Enjoy the music. And yeah, it's been great. Thanks.